Retro.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and whenever I'm in this part of the galaxy, I listen to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Makes flying a little more tolerable. Don't tell Anakin.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And this episode features our weekly look at recent Star Wars news. But Jay, you want to go ahead and give everyone our social media contacts before we get started?
Yep, no news here. We are always found on Facebook and Instagram conveniently at Podcast Stardust.
All right, the discs aligned, the signal's boosted to maximum output, shields down. We're now broadcasting to the galaxy. So this is our first news episode that we've recorded since May the 4th, Star Wars Day. And I thought we'd just spend a little time talking about how we spent our May 4th. So Jay, what did you get up to?
Well, unfortunately, I was supposed to appear at Art on the Alley in New Philadelphia on Sunday, but I had some car trouble, so I had to cancel out, which I felt so bad about, but it happened. So I ended up spending the day watching Tales of the Underworld, and I watched the second episode of Light and Magic, and just kind of hung around and did a lot of Star Warsy kinds of things, and looked at how everybody else was spending their days, and scrolling through Instagram and seeing all of my cosplay friends posting lots of reels, and I did one for myself as well. And so yeah, it was just kind of hanging out at home and indulging in whatever kind of floats my boat or floats my Starfighter or whatever you want to call it that day. But it was good overall. But what'd you do?
Well, I had the Galaxy Far, Far Away streaming channel on Disney Plus on most of the day. Surprisingly, of all the things I could have shown, the first half of the day was The Acolyte. They did the entire series back to back to back that way. And in the middle of it, I switched over and watched A New Hope. Then later on, I ended up watching, what did I watch? I can't remember what. Solo came on, and one of the other movies was on that channel as well. So I just kind of had that channel on and let that dictate most of what I watched throughout the day. I spent a good chunk of the day assembling my Lego C-3PO model. And
Oh yeah.
that was fun. I was really, really impressed with the build on that one. It's a little over 1,000 pieces, and it took a couple hours, and you end up assembling one of the legs and the other leg, and then the bottom part of the torso, the top part of the torso, and then his head and his shoulders and arms is the sequence that you get on the whole thing. But for what you would think would not be all that complex a sight, it was actually pretty clever, the way they put the whole thing together and managed to have the two legs, as opposed to being perfectly lined up facing forward. They're both kind of at an angle. I'm getting into the nitty-gritty like a nerd here, but here I am. The exact same way 3PO stands, and his back is kind of arched a little bit backward. If you look at Anthony Daniels' posture when he's in the full suit, he doesn't necessarily stand up perfectly straight. He's kind of got an arch to his back, and a little bit like they captured that in this model, which I thought was really impressive for Legos. And so anyway, really cool set. And
That was a really cool build. Yeah, you sent me a picture of that, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome.
Yeah, and I have it on my personal Instagram page as well. I think, in fact, it's the last thing I posted on my Instagram page. So go check that out if you're interested in it. But it was fun. Just kind of taking the whole day in. It was nice being on a weekend that you didn't have to worry about work or anything necessarily, unless you work on the weekends. And I'm sorry if that's the case. But yeah, just having Star Wars on all day and getting to do something dedicated to that. I'm listening to some Star Wars podcasts from various friends of ours in the morning while walking my dog, and just about everything that day was touched by Star Wars. Coffee mugs and everything else. I made sure that that's what Star Wars clothes and the like. It was the whole day just dedicated to Star Wars, and it's it's entertainment. It's a hobby. It's a form of stress relief. It's a way of doing things, and it's fun to celebrate it that way. And seeing so many people celebrate it, like as you were saying, online, just kind of following what everyone's doing and how they're acknowledging the day is just it's a nice way to spend the day.
Absolutely. And I have to say too, I had so many people that reached out to me just via text that and some I hear from once a year on Star Wars
Hmm.
Day that, always just say, "May the fourth be with you," or "Happy Star Wars Day." And I I had one that said, "Happy Holidays." Because technically it is our holiday. But, I just treasure the fact that people think of me, when they think of Star Wars. And then even the next day at work, I had people ask, "Oh, how'd you spend Star Wars Day? I thought about you yesterday." So, and that just tickles me because, it's so humbling to think that, when people think of Star Wars, they think of you, which is
Oh yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I get a lot of the same. I'm the Star Wars guy amongst my friends,
Yeah.
so uh, definitely. All right. Well, that was May the 4th. Before we really get into news, I was just thinking about future Star Wars movies the other day, and I had a thought, and so just wanted to see what you think about it. We got Mandalorian and Grogu coming up next year, and then this November, I think, or fall, I think is what they actually said. We've got the next movie with starring Ryan Gosling, directed by Sean Levy, going to production, the Starfighter movie here. The only thing we know about it for certain is that it takes place 5 years after the Rise of Skywalker. And I'm not trying to trick you or anything like that. But Jay, what do you think the movie's about?
Well, I mean, the fact that it's set in that new Jedi Order era, I mean,
Hmm.
this is a period of time that just it has not been really explored at all. And, especially not in films. So I'm just excited to, see where it goes as far as, what in introduction of maybe original characters or narratives that's gonna be distinct from the Skywalker saga. I think
Hmm.
that's kind of exciting because it's branching out into this different type of storytelling. And even though we don't have any specific plot details, it just suggests this focus on pilots and maybe space combat, possibly even involving, another ragtag group of pilots on a daring mission or
Hmm.
something. But, we've got Ryan Gosling, who's obviously expressed a lot of enthusiasm for the project.
Hmm.
Celebration, he talked about the fact that it had a strong script, compelling characters, and that was his key factor in, his decision really to join the film, and that he has a personal connection to Star Wars and that he even had the Star Wars themed bed sheets as a kid. And they showed pictures of that, which quick aside, of course. But I just thought that was super cute, which by the way, I made myself a dress out of those same sheets. But anyhow, so that's my take on Starfighter. But what about you?
Well, that was a much deeper answer than I was expecting to the question here, because the point is like Jay said, they haven't told us anything. It takes place 5 years after Rise of Skywalker, and we've got those very vague comments from Ryan Gosling and Sean Levy about it.
Mhm.
And with a name like Starfighter, like you were saying there towards the end, we're expecting pilots,
Right.
but they haven't actually confirmed that.
This is true.
So what I'm wondering is Starfighter a name like Skywalker or Star
Interesting.
Killer?
Interesting. They
And
did give us
so,
that little tease though, but I guess that means nothing,
well, all it says was
really.
Starfighter. I mean,
True.
it's so. I mean, the tease was the logo and the name of the movie. I mean, so
Yeah,
my point being is that if it really is just about pilots, why didn't they just say so? And the thing like that. Look, I may
true.
be making much ado about nothing here, but just kind of thinking of Star Wars names. Solo is a word,
Mhm.
Skywalker is two words put together. At one point in the script, it was Star Killer, and then that name was resurrected, but for Force Unleashed and things like that. We've seen other names like that seem to take a astral or sky type of a word and pair it with a verb in here. So
Mhm.
what if Starfighter is a name like Skywalker? Again, I'm not going to go to the bank with that, but it just is kind of a well, if it's about a starfighter, if it's about the Rogue Squadron by Patty Jenkins, it may or may not be in development at this point. The last we heard from her is that she owed Lucasfilm a script. A little odd that they would do two movies that would be about essentially the same thing. So could this be a herring is what I'm getting at.
It could
Again,
very well be. I hadn't
just a
thought of
thought
that.
out
Yeah.
there to think about. And
Yeah.
I'm not placing any bets on it, but just in thinking about that movie and how little they told us about it, even though they went out of their way to make an announcement at Star Wars Celebration, maybe they just didn't want to say that to let people not really know what it's about this far in advance. Because if I'm just thinking about prior, so when they announced Rogue One, they went out of their way to talk about that it takes its origins from the crawl, from A New Hope, and it is going to be a grittier Star Wars movie that has this combat and Dirty Dozen type stuff, all those type of adjectives. They largely kept the plot of the Force Awakens under wrap, but they told us it was the next episode in the saga when that was coming out. And when they talked about the new Jedi Order movie, it's going to be about Rey developing another generation of Jedi Knights. The Dawn of the Jedi movie, they didn't give us any details about Taika Waititi, but they didn't even tell us a title on that, but they went out of their way to tell us a title here. So that's just kind of, that's how I arrived at this thought is basically what I'm getting at. So
No, I think that's a fun way to read between the lines on that. And who knows if Ryan's choice of ball cap that says "Never tell me the odds" has anything to do with maybe a little hint being dropped, or if that was just his fashion choice for the day.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's my speculation for this episode. So we can move on. Disney Plus. We have had the completion of the first week of filming for season 2 of Ahsoka. And we know this because Rosario Dawson and Esmond Afandi, hard to say his name for some reason, were at the Liverpool Comic Con as guests, and they were talking about the completion of the first week of filming and how it kind of took a toll on everybody there, which if you didn't believe, Rosario Dawson later posted a picture of her back, and she's got some pretty nice bruises from production of that. So again, I don't know why I'm so fascinated with the status of the production of Ahsoka season 2, but I am. And it was just kind of cool to see them give us an update like that.
Oh yeah, and I just love how into all of it they all are. I mean, with Rosario once again at Celebration, just talking about her training and how excited she was to get back into things. And then we got that tease last week with the shadow, of her being in costume. And then this one on Instagram saying week 1, number 1, WON, not a week 1, ONE. And just showing how, she's really taking one for the team here. And I just love that because we've seen so many times in Star Wars that the characters, even though they're not stunt doubles, that they really do put themselves literally in the line of fire with a lot of these things. And they really embrace those roles. And yeah, it's awesome. Awesome to see. Not awesome that you got bruised, Rosario, just saying. But yeah. But it just that the fact that you're so into it is intense.
Yeah, I do appreciate her enthusiasm. And for the entire cast, for that matter, they all seem to love working on this show. And we got to see during season 1 how tight-knit they were with their various things that they would, especially after Ahsoka came out, all the stuff they put on Instagram and social media from the filming of that, how much fun they had, dancing between takes and joking around on set. So, tight-knit crew.
Yes.
Okay.
Indeed.
In the world of books and comics, we've had the kind of announcement of a new novel coming called Star Wars Last Order. This was revealed on Penguin Random House's website, not through any official news release, but it is a young adult novel coming from Kwame Mabalia. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Sounds
and
right.
It will be the first post Rise of Skywalker book, and it will feature Finn and Jaina. The description is that it's following the end of Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker. The Resistance rescues a ship full of young passengers who had been kidnapped by the First Order. As Finn and Jaina set out to find the First Order officer responsible before he can endanger any more children, the two former stormtroopers must wrestle with their own complicated past as soldiers of the oppressive regime. No release date yet for this one, but yeah, there we go. So it's nice to see that in addition to things like Starfighter, we are actually getting other things taking place after the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, and Kwame Mabalia is definitely new to the Star Wars author list,
Mm-hmm.
not having written anything before, but I was looking up a little bit about some of his past works, and he's worked on some things through, most notably Marvel through Captain America and some other things as well. And he seems to do a lot of I don't want to say middle grade, but young adult type
Mm-hmm.
novels. So yeah, so welcome to the Star Wars family.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, and so we'll probably looking forward to that one next year, the way it looks right now. And then this one completely slipped by me, but The Acolyte Wayseeker was released last week. I knew the book was coming, but for some reason I thought it was coming later in the summer. And somehow I didn't manage to pre-order this one. But just in case you forgot what this book was, it's written by Justina Ireland. It features Jedi Master Endara and Vernestra Rowe. And the brief, they put a brief excerpt of this online. Did you get a chance to read it, Jay?
I actually listened to the little audiobook clip that they put on
Mm-hmm.
StarWars.com because, you know me, I love the audiobooks, and it was Jessica Almasi, who's also done the Tempest Runner and Tempest Breaker
Mm-hmm.
books as well. So it was nice to hear her voice again. And but yeah, I was the same way as you. I saw a couple people posting some things about this book on Instagram, and I thought, oh, they must have, got some of those
Yeah.
early things sent to them, like special people do. And then I was like, "Oh no, crap, it actually did come out on the 6th." So I was in the same boat that you were. But it's good to get back into these characters again. I do think that I'm not sure how I feel about them advertising this so heavily as the acolyte book, kind of thing. But I mean, to me, I guess it is, but it's
Yeah.
still to me it's still High Republic.
See, I feel differently about it. It's, because if you look at the cover, I mean, it's the Acolyte version of Ernesto Rowe, and then it's
Mhm.
got, Endara on it as well. And it's hard not to think of Acolyte when you see that cover for me.
Right.
And I don't know that I learned a whole lot about the book itself from reading the excerpt, but I did cut and paste one section out of it that I thought was actually pretty intriguing. What it says about the book, I don't know, but I'll just read it here real quick. It says, and this is from Vernestra's point of view. When it came from to failure or loss, I always acknowledged the emotion, let it wash over me, and grieved as I needed to. And then I put it aside, not letting it drive my actions. Some of the younger Jedi had taken that lesson to mean emotions and the connections they engendered were bad, and my head hurt that they thought cutting themselves off from connection was the way to be successful as a Jedi. Our connection with others gives us a purpose as a Jedi, but we cannot let their fear become ours, and we cannot let their personal worries drive our actions. That to me had always been the true meaning of the balance we strove towards. Living without fear, loving and embracing the grief that ultimately came when such a strong connection was lost, the sweet and the bitter forever entangled. I love that. I
Mhm.
think that speaks to the whole problem that we have trying to reconcile. You have to be willing to connect, but you can't form attachments type of discussion
Right.
that comes up over and over again in Star Wars. I thought that was really, really well written.
Yeah, Justina Ireland just gets it. She really
Hmm.
does.
Hmm. So yeah, head out to your bookstores and pick that up. I will be joining you sometime this week. Okay.
Whoops.
One last story in this week's news, and Jay, good news. We know what we're doing for Halloween this year.
Yes.
That's because they've announced Tales from the Nightlands. This is a 3-issue special Halloween event comic written by Kevin Scott that will be coming from Dark Horse Comics on September 3rd. And it's keeping in the vein of stories like Tales from Vader's Palace. The description of this one is that on the planet Ryloth, Twi'lek speak in hushed tones about the Nightlands, the spectral realm where their spirits retire after death. According to legend, there are certain nights when the veil between the haunted place and the land of the living is so thin that one can communicate with the other side. Enter the Nightlander, a Star Wars boogeyman who seeks to possess a powerful living host and bring despair to the galaxy. Each issue will feature one of 3 generations of galactic heroes facing off against the malevolent Nightlander. Issue 1 sees young Padawan Anakin Skywalker visiting Ryloth with Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, attempting to summon the ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn for a final goodbye. But when Anakin makes contact with the Nightlands, it isn't his old friend who answers. Issue 2 features Luke and Leia facing this horror, and issue 3 pits Rey and Finn against dark power unlike any in the galaxy. Sounds like fun to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the fact that number one, I always treasure the idea that Star Wars goes to the well of the cultural beliefs and, in this case, legends of different cultures around the galaxy. And in this case, it's Ryloth and Twi'leks. And also the fact that they're doing different generations of
Mm-hmm.
heroes with this and touching upon all of those different aspects of, the different types of characters that might resonate with different even generations of fans.
Yeah, and Kevin Scott's done a good job of that with some of
Oh,
his
yeah.
past. I'm thinking of which one was it? I mean, but he's done this a number of times where he tells these stories and they've got different eras and different heroes in there, and it's
Mhm.
something that appeals to everyone. He does a really good job with that, and his it's fun to read these things because they're not always something that you can take as gospel that's canon or something like that, but they're in the spirit of Halloween. They always make for good Halloween reading for Star Wars. So
Oh,
I'm very
yeah.
much looking forward to this, and hopefully they'll all be out by the time Halloween rolls around so that we can do it, cover it for the podcast this year.
Yep, yep. So I like having a direction though. So we've gotten Tales from the Death Star and Vader's Castle and now this one.
Yeah. I'm going to skip to a little bit of social feedback before I wrap up the show. And over on YouTube, Joe's Woods responded to our last episode, which was about the first episode of season 2 of Light Magic. And he says, not really to do with this episode, but I was lucky enough to see Star Wars in concert with music by the Portland Symphony Orchestra in Maine. Someone has masterfully fixed, I should say, the Han versus Greedo scene. The weird Matrix-like twitchy dodging that Han does is no more. Now Greedo shoots off to the right as he falls from Han's shot. What an improvement, in my opinion. Did anyone else notice this? I looked on Disney Plus the next morning to watch the scene again, but it hasn't been changed there. Maybe it
Hmm.
is exclusive to the concert cut, and I'm pretty sure I didn't imagine it. Anyway, hopefully someone can back me up on this. Okay, so Jay, the last time I saw Star Wars in concert or for A New Hope was years ago, and I don't recall this change being there, but that doesn't mean it can't be changed in the meantime. And I did just watch A New Hope on May the 4th and didn't notice this change, but I am intrigued. I like the description, the
Right.
weird matrix like twitchy
Right.
dodging. That was pretty cool that Joe gives us here. But I'm hoping Star Wars in concert rolls around so I can go check this out.
Oh, yeah, I'm with I mean, I love Star Wars in concert. That's always such a great way to spend, an evening, whether it's inside or outside, and it's usually at an outside, like, amphitheater whenever it comes around here, but
Mhm.
yeah, I haven't seen A New Hope in concert again since probably, what, 2017? Or 2
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, 2017 would make sense.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's
I
been a
can't
while.
remember when it was here last, but I had a great time with the Dallas
Oh,
Symphony
yeah.
Orchestra when it was.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, if anyone knows the answer to this for Joe, let us know and we'll share it on a future episode. But
Inquiring
yeah,
minds want to know, yes.
thanks for reaching out, Joe. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks,
Uh,
Joe.
all right. Well, then that'll do it for this episode and our discussion of recent Star Wars news. Thank you all for joining us. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already, and that'll get you our future discussions of Star Wars news. And once you've done that, we'd really appreciate your ratings and reviews as well. And if you want more podcast stars than what your podcatcher is going to carry, head over to retrozapp.com, which is the home of the show and home of a bunch of other great shows on the network, including HCL Case Files, Animaniacast, Brews and Blasters, Dorklair, Doomcast, Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots Plus, Superhero Suite, and War Trails. And over on Enjoy Stuff, they just did a discussion of the 20th and 10th anniversaries of Revenge of the Sith and The Force Awakens. So go check
Nice.
those out. And Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody what our social media contacts are and where else we can be found online?
Sure. Yeah. If you'd like to interact with us, we are on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And you can also check out our Pinterest boards and our YouTube channels, which we have the regular YouTube outlet as well as YouTube music. So head over, like, subscribe, share those out, and be like Joe and interact with us as well. And we also have our T Public store where you can support the show by picking up one of 7 different show logo designs or all 7. Why not? Summer's coming, you need a closet refresh. And the link to that will be in our show notes. And you can gather up everything from t shirts and sweatshirts to coffee mugs, tote bags for the beach, and all kinds of other fun stuff. So, once again, check out that link in our show notes.
All right. And what's going on in cosplay?
All right. Well, you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. And I'm over there posting as Ahsoka, the fourth sister, 2 different versions of Hera, as well as my original concept Mandalorian, as well as Leia every once in a while, different versions of that. And you also never know what you're going to find elsewhere, or I should say otherwise. So once again, check that out on Instagram at j.snipscosplay.
All right. Coming on the show on Wednesday, we're going to start our coverage of Tales of the Underworld with a look at the episodes featuring Asajj Ventress. And then on Friday, we are wrapping up season 2 of Andor with a discussion of episodes 10 through 12. Can't believe it's here already. Wow.
Right.
So, with that said, thanks for listening to episode 885 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great week. And until next time, may the Force be with you.